Thank you very much, Regan. And once again, a very, very good day to you for joining us at this Digicon, or on this Digicon platform. To the media specifically, thank you for joining us, but obviously, most importantly, citizens of the Western Cape, thank you very much for tuning in. And I really hope that these platforms are helping you make decisions, helping you understand the complexity of this massive crisis that faces us. I know you feel it every single day, especially now when you're sitting at load shedding level 6 more often than not. I know that I'm sure, as I am, you wake up in the morning and you're in load shedding and you've got some torch system that you can shave with in the morning. It really does affect every single one of us. But that's what this platform is about. It's about saying, this is what we are busy doing. This is our plan in the province and how we are trying to address this. At the same time, a platform for you to interact with us, because also from those questions, we will know what kind of guest to opt to welcome onto this platform to help you make some of your own decisions as we deal with this crisis together. Perhaps also just one other thing that I'd like to say is it was interesting. Last night I was out in Boer-op-die-Berg, way into the Koa Boekenveld, and engaging with the agricultural sector. And just as every one of you in your households or in your small businesses, energy is a big, big issue. And it's a big issue in enabling us to keep our economy going and keep jobs going. And why did they want me to come and speak to them? Come and talk about the energy plan. What are those things that we are busy doing? From making sure that we're getting to packs that are going to go to indigent households because they can't afford to put a solar panel on their roof, or have some kind of charging facility for their phone, or most importantly, a light that their matriculant son or daughter is using in order to finish this school year and, of course, their school term, right to the businesses. And, of course, that's why we're going to get a presentation today on financing of systems. Perhaps the last thing I want to say is that in Cabinet yesterday, we've now approved the next step on one of the projects, which is about how do we enable a few of our smaller towns to become absolutely load shedding free this year, a really nice stretch target. And we've approved the next stage. What happens now is that approval goes out to those municipalities to say to them, please come back to us within the next 10 to 14 days on whether you're able to implement this with the criteria that's in place. So hopefully within the next short while, we can actually start to announce which of those towns we are going to be helping as a province and a municipality to become load shedding free as quickly as possible. But here we are in our Digicon, and of course the first person normally to give us an update of where we're at is Mr. Alvie Lester. And perhaps, Alvie, if you can also just mention this issue, which is that fibre issue that we are picking up here in the Western Cape. A lot of people asking questions about it. But Alvie, thank you very much, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Premier, and welcome to the media and the public that is on the forum with us today. So yeah, maybe I'll try and address the fibre problem that Eskom is experiencing. So what happens is that Eskom, the switching, which is really the ability to turn on and off certain pieces of equipment on the network, it is done remotely, and it's done through a fibre network, which is very much, like a cellular network where you can do things remotely. What Eskom has experienced, it's not the first time, I have to also be frank and say it's happened in the past before, where they have had fibre problems, some of it related to vandalism and theft, others related to major faults in the telecom system. And in this case, I believe it is a telecoms issue that they're dealing with. The fibre network is managed at a national level. So you've got a Eskom Telecoms nationally that looks at the fibre for Eskom in the country. But the impact of the fibre fault, what it means is that Eskom is unable to remotely switch networks on and off. Now, this has got an added disadvantage in that during load shedding, when they're able to switch you off, they could typically bring you back within a 30-minute window to switch you back on. but that's done remotely. What they'll have to do now with this fiber fault is to manually switch back the networks. And depending on the size of the fault that they're dealing with, it might mean a number of either substations or mini substations will have to be switched manually. So they will have to have resources available in all of these areas to manually bring back the loads. And this will definitely add to the time that people experience no energy or no electricity. So I think, again, I've seen that they're not able to give us an estimated time for a time to repair. The only assumption I can make is that they have a problem with some of the switching technology at the telecoms environment. But this will certainly have an impact on customers in the Western Cape, because it looks and it appears as if it's the line into the Western Cape that is affected. So people should then be expecting that we will be out for longer than anticipated because of the switching problem that Eskom has. But let me move on to today's presentation. And really what I'd like to focus on is again what the outlook is going to look like for the week ahead. And I must say, if I look at the figures that we have available to us, we've seen a slight drop in the energy availability for the week. It's gone from 54 down to about 53%. But what is probably more marked increase is that the unavailability of plant. And if you look at again the third line in the table that we have, you'll see it's the unplanned outage factor, and that has gone up from 32 to 35. Again, an indicator that the plant is not coming back sustainably, and that other plant is in fact going off the system as well. Now, this has been the sort of trend that we've seen for quite some time. I do think, though, the concern should be that we're entering into the winter months, which means that the load will typically become higher. The demand on Eskom, on energy or electricity, will grow during the winter. And it's natural, there is a slight increase in the winter periods. But if we cannot supply the current load, which is lower than what the winter forecast will be, I think we can expect that we're going to have longer periods of load shedding. Again, if I look at the week ahead prognosis, and again, just focusing on the week of the 15th of May, you can see again, we're going to be in the red for that period. And I suspect that we are going to be between stages 4 and 6 for some time still, this week most certainly. And as the sort of cold sort of periods bite and that load increases, I think that will put additional strain on the network, which I think could lead to longer periods of load shedding again. The other thing that is quite important, and I know that many customers have started to move to batteries and inverters, and I think we've said this in some of the sessions before, but it is quite important for people to understand that a battery with an inverter alone doesn't really solve the problem. I think the fundamental difference is that you should have solar panels that recharge that battery. If you're only going to have the battery and an inverter, the risk is that all we're doing is that we're shifting the peak of the energy required. So after load shedding, everybody's battery starts to recharge, and it just creates another peak in a different window. So we are looking at initiatives to solve the problem. But I think the caution that I want to just put out to the public is that when you make the decision around battery and inverter, I think go for the hybrid system that does talk to the possibility of adding the solar panels, which you then use to charge your battery, and you're not requiring the network to then charge your battery. And so you can remove that peak on a more permanent basis. Yes, but prognosis for the week ahead, I think we're in for a red week, stages 4 to 6 most certainly on the cards. And I think with the winter coming up, we should expect that this is going to be an even more difficult period with the load increasing. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very, very much, Alvi. Thanks for that report. Next up is Colin Strumpher, and I want to welcome him. So thank you very much for joining us on this platform. Colin comes from Better Bond, and so I think my initial message before I hand over to Colin is that I think we must all understand that it's not a quick fix, our energy crisis that we are sitting in. And, as important as it is for me, as I said earlier on, that we've got to make sure indigent households are looked after, and we're busy with a long-term plan of getting 5,700 megawatts into the Western Cape, and we're looking at municipal support and municipality kind of tenders that are going out for big megawatt projects. At the same time, how can you as households, become resilient? How can you in households, as Alvy's been talking about, actually go beyond just looking at a small inverter system? How can you really start to solve your own problems? I think it makes good sense, especially knowing that this is 18 months to 24 months before we really start to see bigger investments into energy systems that start to change our risk. I mean, you saw that slide from Alvi. We are under huge pressure from load shedding going into winter, and all the projections are it's going to get worse. I think it makes really good sense to have a look at how you can play your part in helping yourself, but at the same time also helping our bigger system. And of course, that's about saying, can you invest into a longer term payoff to solve a solution? And what better way than to have someone here to speak about funding and financing. And so, Colin, thank you very much for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Premier. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. So I just wanted to talk around what options clients have got available in terms of finance and financing solar and solar products. Each bank has got various options available, and I'll quickly talk through most of those. And I'm going to touch on, because that's primarily what we do from an origination side, is home loans. So I'll focus a little bit more time on the home loan side. Each bank has got an option, as I said. Most of the banks will have a personal loan option available, not something that we necessarily deal with, but just as an example, 100,000 Rand personal loan or asset finance, whatever you want to call that, at prime over a 5-year period is probably going to cost you about 2,500 Rand a month. So that's an option that's already available to everybody. And then I do know that there are obviously service providers and suppliers out there that also have a rental option on solar and inverters, etc. So that's possibly also an option. I've heard of figures between 2,000 and 3,000 Rand a month. That's those sort of things that I'm aware of. Then on the home loan side, just to touch on each bank, maybe individually. To start off with, obviously, if you have an existing property, you have an existing home loan on that property, you can always go for a further advance option. So that's trying to access some of the money that you've already got into the property, the equity that's available there. In other words, you've bought a property 4 or 5 years ago. It's now worth more. So the difference between the value and what you owe on the property, you should be able to access that in a further loan, an access bond, a readvance, whatever the banks may have available. Obviously, you need to qualify. You need to do an application either through us or directly with the bank, and the bank will then give you the terms and conditions based on that. Typically for 100,000 Rand bond over a 20-year period, you're looking roughly now at prime at about 1,200 Rand a month as an installment. Okay, so that's on the, if you have an existing property and you want to access some of those funds in the equity of the property. Then each bank, as if you want to buy a new property now, so you're now starting out, I'm buying this new property, I want to invest in solar upfront, each bank again has different options available. So I want to talk about FNB and RMB. They're basically the same bank, just different sectors of the banking industry. Their offering is that you can apply for the finance upfront. In other words, you apply for your purchase price of the property and you add an additional amount to that already home loan, provided you qualify, obviously, for the solar. So the product with them starts at a minimum of 50,000, so you can't do for less than that, and a maximum of 15% of the purchase price. That amount will then be added to the property purchase. So let's say it's a property of 1 million and the solar is going to cost you 100,000. You would apply for the 1 million bond plus add 100,000 on top of that. They will require quotes from providers. Clients can use their own service providers, provided they are registered. Obviously, there will be terms and conditions that apply to who those providers are and what qualifications they need. So that's FNB and RMB. If you can also apply for, which some people do, especially first-time buyers, they will apply for a home loan plus some of the legal fees included, typically 105 or 108% finance. In FNB and RMB's case, then the maximum amount allowed on solar would then be 200,000. So they cap it because you have now already applied for more than what the purchase price was, with the costs and etc. legal fees included. Okay, then moving on to the next bank, Standard Bank, they have got, similar to FNB as well, they have got a facility in place where if you apply for a loan now, they will register an additional amount for you already, 20% additional. So that means should you apply for a home loan of 1 million, typically you would register a bond for 1 million. They will register a bond for 1.2 million. A bit technical, but what it really means in essence is when the bond registers for the 1 million, there is already provision made for an additional 200,000 without incurring any additional legal fees. That amount can then be applied for after registration. Again, quotes, etc. from a solar provider must be provided to try and then access that facility. The bank, in other words, adds value. They consider the solar to add value to the property. FNB, similar, because obviously they're doing it up front. They are seeing that there is value in adding this to your property currently. Standard Bank, I know, and I must just add, all of the banks will have some better solution or different solution going down the road. This is very new for them. So the ones that I'm mentioning to you now is as I have it right now. This could change today, this could change tomorrow. So we're already seeing that, for example, with a Standard Bank, they are now also looking at how can we do this option up front rather than going through the whole process of registration first and then applying for the solar. So already in talks, already a difference from basically yesterday to today in what options are available there. Absa and Nedbank at this point are not seeing that solar is adding value to the property, in other words, increasing the value. So your R1 million purchase, they're not seeing that the solar is increasing the value. Their options would be, as mentioned earlier, the typical further advance. In other words, is there more value in the property than when you bought it? Or they need to see what is it that you're going to do to improve this house. Are you building a garage and you're doing solar at the same time? What is the cost? What does a quote look like? Is there anything that's increasing the value of the property? Again, that is the picture right now. Typically, if one bank has an option that's better than what they've got, they will typically get to that point as well. We're not there yet with all of them, but that's really what typically happens within the banks and the products that they offer. In a nutshell, that is basically the options on there. As I said, 100,000 on a bond over 20 years is going to typically cost you about 1,000 Rand additional to your current bond installment. Work on about 1,000 Rand for every 100,000. Right now, the interest rates are obviously it could be slightly more, could be slightly less, depending on what interest rate you've been able to negotiate. And again, please, if you're buying a new property, you're looking into these things, speak to your bond originator, let them help you through the process, let them talk to you about what is happening right now and happening today and what is available for you as a consumer in the home loan space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strumpher, for your insightful input. This is a very important issue, so a lot of people out there appreciate you demystifying, so to speak, some of the aspects around financing options for alternative energy sources as we navigate our way through load shedding. Right, I'll now open the floor to questions. The media or the public at large, you're welcome to pose those questions in the chat box or via WhatsApp. I do note that we have received a few questions already on WhatsApp, so I'll start with those. And while we work through those, then you can also raise further questions. So the first question we've received is, and this is obviously directed to you, Mr. Strumpher, when considering loans, are personal or home loans better? Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so typically a personal loan would be over a shorter period of time and at a higher interest rate. So it really depends on the consumer and budget and what it is they're trying to do. I'm in the home loan space, so we negotiate better interest rates for clients. So you should get a better interest rate on a home loan, and then obviously over a longer period, so actually slightly less. Well, sometimes a lot less. So depending on what it is that you want to do, which product is going to fit you the best, if it's affordability, then a home loan is probably the better option.
Great, thank you. I've got two more questions, so I'll pose those. And once again, you're the man of the moment, Mr. Strumpher, so you're best placed to answer these at least. A listener or viewer asks, I have an existing property and have only 1 year left on paying back the home loan. Should I rather increase the home loan or get a personal loan instead? The other question as well, more generic and general, have you noticed a noticeable uptick or increase in people coming to Better Bond for advice and also just approaching you to apply for loans or get the best deals for loans? I suppose that almost links to earlier this year when the finance minister did announce those tax breaks for solar energy specifically. But have you noticed a noticeable marked increase? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, there's definitely been an increase on requests from our consumers wanting to install solar, and I can say that probably 6 months ago the bank options didn't exist. So the fact that they are coming into the market with these options available for consumers is indicator to that trend. The clients definitely want to try and do this upfront in most cases, or they go for the further loan, as I explained, and add the solar to their properties right now. And then to the first question, again, I think it's similar to the question I answered earlier. I would say if you increase your home loan, your repayment is going to be slightly better than on a personal loan. It's secured with the property, etc. So if it's a case of can I afford it and I want to pay the least amount possible, then the home loan typically with a longer period, repayment period, is probably better.
I come in on that, Mr. Strumpher. I want to also just maybe from my side, and I hope you agree with what I'm going to say here. You're welcome to disagree, though. If you've got a year left on your home loan, and you're going to take out a loan to make sure that your home is now load shedding free, it's going to be a fair investment. But and my advice would be to, don't extend your bond for 20 years and pay off your energy system over 20 years. Rather try and pay it off over 5 years. And then also make sure that, the money that you're saving, because you're generating your own electricity, the money that you would be paying over for your energy consumption to your municipality or to Eskom, that money goes into your bond or goes into paying back that. And specifically, I would very much like you to be connected to the local grid and selling your power back into the grid, and anything you sell back into the grid, add that back into the system so you pay it off as quickly as possible, because you don't want to have a system that has been depreciated beyond zero, but you're still paying it off over many years.
Agree 100%, Premier, and I think that's true for any home loan and any finance, really. You want to pay it off as soon as possible. Typically anybody who's got a home loan, even if you're not adding solar, even if you've got solar, if you've got 10 Rand extra to pay in every month do. It's debt that's unnecessary if you can pay it off. And the more you pay in, the sooner you will pay it off, the more you'll save on interest. It's a snowball effect. So every rand and cent you pay extra in your bond will increase the time that you pay that bond off in and save you interest. So yeah, definitely agree 100%. If you can, do the term over 10 years or 20 years because you want to have a small installment for those tough months that might be ahead, but rather pay it off in 5 years if you can, definitely.
Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Mr. Strumpher. 2 more questions, and I think after these 2, we will then wrap it up unless someone to sneak those questions over the finishing line. It's asked here in the chat room, if I go with the option of refinancing my home loan to go fully off the grid and it generates too much, can I resell the electricity, and how does that work? I suspect that's a question that Mr. Lester, you might have to weigh in on as well. And then the other one I've just received on WhatsApp, it's very simple. It says here, pros and cons, rental versus buying. So I'm reading between the lines here. Does that mean renting, for example, a solar system or buying one, which would be more prudent financially? Thank you.
Yeah, so from my side, I don't think I can answer the first question, but from my side on the financing side, it's maybe a debatable concept. Rental, you are never going to obviously own the devices. You're never going to own the solar, the panels, the batteries, etc. Therefore, you don't have to worry about the maintenance, replacing, etc., etc. But as we're seeing with solar now as well, when you do own it, and maybe some estate agents can weigh in on this as well, typically your property is going to be worth more as well because it is adding value to the property. So I think there's probably pros and cons on both sides. It's going to depend from customer to customer. It's going to depend on cost. I think if you do it through a home loan, typically right now, it's going to cost you less than probably the rental option. But you don't have the hassles then of, do I replace the panel? Do they replace it, etc. That would be my view on that.
So Regan, let me just respond to the first question around if you have excess energy, could you sell it back into the system? If you lived in the metro area, which is supplied by the city of Cape Town, yes, you will have the ability to sell it back to the city. The city already has the approval to buy energy from customers that have excess energy. The other municipalities in the Western Cape, we are busy assisting them with an application to National Treasury for an exemption and the ability to also then buy back energy from their customers. But it is done on a case-by-case basis. But we hope that we'd be able to do that for all customers sitting in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lester. I am going to just say thank you very much to everybody who's joined us. Please also note that our social media platforms are available for any of these questions. They could steer what a future Digicon would look like. If you need to know something about a specific issue, we'll see if we can get an immediate answer to you, but it can also then say, listen, I think we need to get a specialist in X, Y, or Z. So the future Digicons and the content is in your hands, and we look forward to those further questions. Colin, thank you very much for joining us. And the reason that you are with us is because people have been asking these kind of questions. So thank you very much for that. Alvi, as usual, thank you very much. And perhaps before I sign off, I want to just do one last thing and say to Alvi, please, I need you to come back with a fun fact for the week or a tip for the week. And that for me, just to say thanks to everybody for joining us. Thanks to everybody for the presentations, and of course thank you to everybody sitting here in the tech backup. We also really appreciate it. This doesn't just happen, but thank you. Back to you, Alvi.
Thank you, Premier. So electricity is good for electronic devices, but I must also indicate to the public and the media, gas is a much more efficient measure for heating and for cooking. So if you have an opportunity to replace, let's say, your geyser, I would suggest you consider a gas geyser. If you have an opportunity to replace your oven and your typical stove, particularly your stove with plates, that you should consider gas as an option for cooking, as well as for space heating. So gas definitely a better option than electricity, and something that we should be considering in terms of our dual fuel options. Thank you, Premier.
And with that, thank you very much. We wrap up the 10th edition of the Premier's weekly Energy Digicons. Very big thank you to Mr. Colin Strumpher from Betterbond, and of course, the special advisor to the Premier on Energy, Mr. R.B. Lester, and of course, the Premier. Same time, same place next week, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much and have a good week.